What is going down in Manhattan today, the lower court Manhattan, with Donald Trump there, the 45th American president, of course, standing in front of a criminal court facing charges, currently under arrest, some 34 charges against him as well. We have these pictures from court, and the question is, have the Democrats won today? If this is a politically motivated witch hunt indeed, have they won in the short term just by getting these photographs out there? Or is it a bad long-term play? We'll be discussing that plenty more. But if there's one thing that could be said about this, it is Donald Trump once again making lemonade out of lemons. I'm going to be joined here in the studio, and currently joined in the studio by author and historian Tessa Dunlop and by Times Radio host Adam Bolton. Just the people I want alongside me on a day like this, because we're going to be talking a lot about historical context, both of you. Let's just start by getting your reaction to what we've seen so far play out in the last hour. I mean, Adam, I know you're a keen historian yourself, and obviously, Tessa, you're an accredited historian. What do you think this means within the sort of great panoply of modern US history and the presidents that you've covered in your career?
Well, it is the first time that we've seen a president indicted, so that's a first. But then Donald Trump was also the first president to be impeached twice. So the Donald Trump show continues. My own feeling, however, is that this doesn't take him any nearer to the White House. It will help him raise money for his campaign in the short run, but he's going to have a lot of legal problems going ahead, which may even deny him the Republican nomination. But what is absolutely clear is the majority of Americans don't want him back as president. And even within the Electoral College, he looks doomed on that front, and that may be why his own party decide to ditch him in the course of campaign year next year. Your
view hasn't been swayed at all by the amount of campaign donations they managed to raise over the weekend?
Well, by his standards, it's not that much. I mean, he's got 8 million, and you know, one of the sort of dirty little secrets of Donald Trump is that campaigning has always been a way for him to raise money. So he's continued to do that, but he hasn't built up the level of support which he had before, or the rate of donations. And indeed, if you look at the demonstrations in New York today, which he called for, I mean, they're pretty pathetic. That Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene with her bullhorn was pretty much drowned out and taken away.
You mean you weren't convinced when she yelled out he was Nelson Mandela and then Jesus? You weren't swayed by her rhetoric?
Well, it doesn't matter about me. The crowd wasn't particularly impressed either. They all carried on waving their banners and pushing their own particular level. You know, we didn't see January the 6th today, did we?
No, we didn't. But I think what we're looking at is something bigger, more systemic than Donald Trump. We're being briefly distracted by the giant kind of personality. But actually, the polarization of American politics, what this has done to either side has led to really the sort of democratic rot, the lack of faith in all their key institutions, which has propped up that country and led it to be the greatest country on the planet in the 20th century.
Yeah, but on the other hand, people are saying, look, he's politically motivated, the district attorney, that he said that he was going to prosecute Donald Trump. All true. But in America, you elect your district attorney anyway, and therefore he has a
Adam, when people stop
platform.
believing in the system, when they don't know what's true or not, when there's misinformation spread around like
we'll
margarine.
blame Donald Trump for that.
And how do you get rid of that? You get rid of the man, maybe, but not the problem.
Can you not argue, that's what I was going to say on Adam's point, that it is Donald Trump that has led the precedent for picking away at the fabric of democratic institutions in the US? And one could argue that what does the US stand for, if not for its democracy, its justice system, its courts? And if we take the line of questioning that we hear a lot, we've been hearing a lot over the last 90 minutes actually on this network, of this idea of sham trials, kangaroo courts, you know, you hear it again and again. Does that mean that the US justice system just doesn't work?
I don't think it doesn't work. And actually what you're going to see here, like a sort of giant monster slowly masticating, it will run its course. And nobody knows actually what's going to happen and what the implications are for the primaries or the 2024 presidential election.
The American justice system is much more negotiable and provisional than the system in this country or in France. You know, you've got individual states with different laws, you've got federal crimes at massive level. And, you know, just remember, how did they bring Al Capone to justice? They didn't do him for being a gangster. They did him on tax evasion. I mean, that's how American justice works.
But Adam, why this matters is today, at the same time, and not making the headlines in the way Donald Trump is, we just saw Finland enter NATO. We've just got 800 more miles of border with Russia. Actually, what happens in America has direct implications for the geopolitics of the world. And at the moment, our freest democracy, our strongest military power on the planet, is severely compromised.
Well, hang on, we might be better off talking about that. I agree with you, it's more important than the fate of Donald Trump.
No, but they bleed into each other.
However, the fact that NATO has expanded along the Russian border is a massive V sign to Donald Trump, who tried to hollow out NATO and, as we know, thought that President Putin was a genius.
And don't forget, he could come back in as president in 24.
And it will affect us, of course, if Donald Trump, and that's why we're talking about it here on TalkTV. I know you might be watching us from your sitting room in Manchester this evening, thinking, not more Trump, for God's sake, there's else going on in the United Kingdom. But he is the leader, once was the leader of what's called the free world. If he does again, of course, the implications ripple around the world, as Tessa and Adam just laid out. I want to talk a little bit about the historical context of this as well, because Donald Trump, first US president to face criminal charges, as we pointed out, impeached twice before. But this criminal charge thing, there he is in court this afternoon, slumped over the desk there, looking like any other ordinary citizen, pretty much, in the dock, if we can call it that, behind the table. But he's not...
That's the first time he's been called.
He's not the first world leader that's ever faced criminal charges, of course. France's Nicolas Sarkozy was done on corruption. South Korea's Park Geun-hye also done on corruption as well. And, of course, Berlusconi, the Bunga Bunga boy, he's been bouncing in and out of the courts for decades. Different fates awaited all of those people, different penalties, political suspension, etc. But I think what is key here, what stands out for Trump, is can he bounce back from arrest, even though he's not wearing handcuffs, but from this picture we're seeing this afternoon in the courthouse, straight back to the White House in 2024?
Well, let us not forget Boris Johnson, he's not in the courts at the moment, but he is being pursued by the Privileged Committee of the House of Commons, which could end his political career. So we're not exactly exempt from this.
Not immune, no.
But that's what's interesting. Let's not forget, when he was first impeached, he was impeached twice, of course, that was about a then unknown Ukrainian president who he was trying to arm twist into doing dirty work against Biden in order for him to get a multi-million-pound deal to shore him up in the Donbass. That wasn't convicted. And that means that he can still stand for high office. You know, I look back and I think, if only on that case.
The moment of truth for Donald Trump, I was there in Washington, D.C., was the second impeachment trial in the Senate, where the Senate was clearly wobbling on whether to impeach him or not. And in the end, the Republican Party decided that in their own interests of re-election fundraising, they would let him off after January the 6th. That was the moment. And since then, Trump has carried on with his show. He could have been finished off then. If he had been convicted by the Senate, that would have disqualified him from running for office.